My husband left me for my best friend, but he didn't expect this. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo inside my ears. The lights were off, but the moonlight through the bedroom window lit up just enough to show what I should never have seen. My husband and my best friend. They didn't know I was there. I wasn't supposed to be home early, but there they were, on my bed, wrapped around each other, whispering things I couldn't fully hear, but didn't need to, because the way he looked at her, the way she laughed like she had done this 100 times, it was all I needed to understand. They had betrayed me, and not just recently. This was old, familiar, practiced. My name is Angela Carter. I'm 42 years old, and that night, something inside me died. But I didn't cry. Not then. I quietly stepped back, left the house, and sat in my car for what felt like hours. You'd think after 19 years of marriage and a lifetime of friendship, I would have fallen apart right then and there. But I didn't, because something else was born that night. Something cold, calculating, and determined. This is the story of how I turned my heartbreak into power, how I made sure they'd never forget the woman they tried to erase. No shouting, no begging, no drama, just consequences. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to know, from which city are you watching this video? Leave it in the comments below. I'd love to see where my story is reaching. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are so many stories like mine to be told. And maybe one of them is yours. It's strange how betrayal doesn't hit you all at once. At first, it's just a feeling, like a quiet knock on the back of your mind that something isn't quite right. Jason had been distant lately. Not cold exactly, just elsewhere. Distracted, smiling at things he wouldn't explain, coming home late from work with vague excuses and a tiredness that felt performative. And Melissa? She'd been busier than usual, canceling lunches, not returning texts right away, saying things like, "Sorry, babe, things have been so crazy." But I knew her, and that wasn't her. We used to talk every day. We used to know each other's rhythms, laugh about how we always thought of texting the same thing at the same time. That connection had started to dim, and I didn't know why. I thought maybe she was just seeing someone new. She'd been single for a while. Maybe she didn't want to share yet. Or maybe I didn't want to see it, because there were signs. Tiny cracks, like when I saw her perfume in the glove box of Jason's car. It was her signature scent. She'd worn it since college. I asked him about it, and he said she must have left it when he drove her home one night after a dinner party. Logical. Harmless, right? But then there were other things. A red wine glass on the patio, lipstick stained, on a night I'd been working late. A shopping bag from a boutique Melissa loved, hidden inside our guest room closet, with the receipt addressed to Jason, and the way they looked at each other. Not always. Just, when they thought I wasn't watching, quick glances, lingering smiles. There was this moment at my birthday dinner, the last one before everything came crashing down, where Jason made a joke and Melissa laughed too hard, not in a natural way, almost guilty. I remember thinking, God, Angela, you're being paranoid. They're your two favorite people in the world. You trust them. But trust, I've learned, is a tricky thing. You can give it freely, but once it's gone, it doesn't return the same. And something inside me had started to shift. I began to pay attention. Not out of jealousy, but survival. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I started keeping track, watching patterns, listening to conversations with a new kind of awareness. I smiled like everything was fine. I played the role of the loving wife and the loyal friend. But inside, I was taking notes. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because the air smelled like spring, that mix of warm grass and something sweet in bloom. I had just come back from the grocery store, my arms full of bags, when I noticed Melissa's car parked a few blocks from our house. That wasn't strange. What was strange was the way my heart reacted. Something in me just knew. I can't explain it. Intuition, maybe. Or experience pretending to be innocence. I walked slower, quiet. I didn't want them to hear me coming. As I approached the house, I realized Jason's car was already in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home yet, and Melissa hadn't called to say she was dropping by. My hands started to sweat. I left the groceries in the kitchen, moved silently through the hallway, and that's when I heard it. Muffled laughter. Soft. Too soft. The kind that isn't meant to be shared. The kind that belongs in secrecy. I followed the sound to our bedroom door, slightly ajar. The soft breeze from the open window made it creak, just enough for me to see inside. And what I saw? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Jason was lying on the bed, shirt half open, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Melissa was next to him, her shoes off, fingers running lazily through his hair like she'd done it 1,000 times before. My best friend, my husband. There was no hesitation in their touch, no fear of being caught, just comfort. The comfort of people who knew this wasn't their first time. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stood there, hidden in the hallway, holding my breath as if the sound of it would shatter the image before me. And then Melissa said something I'll never forget. She's too busy trying to be perfect. She doesn't even see us. Jason laughed and kissed her hand, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. But I wasn't crying. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to breathe, to think, to get away from the life I no longer recognized. I ended up in a small coffee shop 2 towns over, sitting in the parking lot, staring at nothing. For almost 20 years, I had loved that man. I had trusted Melissa with every piece of my life, every joy, every heartbreak, every secret, and they had both looked me in the eye, lied to me, and then lay together in the space I had built with love and sacrifice. That night, I didn't confront them. I didn't call, I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I stayed quiet, because something inside me was beginning to shift. The woman I was before, the trusting, gentle, forgiving Angela, she was gone, and in her place, something colder was forming. Not rage, not yet, but clarity. They thought they could keep doing this behind my back. They thought I was too soft, too blind, too polite, but they didn't know what I was capable of. Not yet. The next few days passed like a fog. I still woke up at 6, still made coffee, still folded Jason's shirts like I always had. But everything felt detached, robotic, like I was floating above my own life, watching it from a distance. Every smile was a mask. Every breath was an effort. And every time Jason kissed me goodbye in the morning, pretending everything was normal, I felt a strange mix of sickness and power. Because I knew what he didn't know I knew. I was no longer his wife. I was his shadow, watching, waiting. I cried in the shower so he wouldn't hear. I screamed into a pillow while he watched football downstairs. And Melissa? She kept texting me as if nothing had happened. "Miss you, babe. Let's do wine night soon. You working late this week? Jason said you've been so busy," Jason said. She was using him as her excuse to me. The irony of it was almost unbearable. But the worst part, the part that kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling while he slept beside me, wasn't just that they had betrayed me. It was that I had sacrificed so much for them, for both of them. I thought about all the years I stood by Jason when money was tight and he hated his job, how I encouraged him to go back to school, how I took on extra shifts, stayed up late helping him prepare for interviews, believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. I thought about the miscarriages, the quiet grief, the way we held each other in the darkness, promising we'd survive anything together. I had given him everything, my youth, my dreams, my loyalty, my body, my time, and Melissa. I remembered how I covered for her when she cheated on her ex-boyfriend, how I helped her move out of an abusive relationship, how I spent hours, days, nursing her through heartbreaks and breakdowns. I was her safety net, her family, and now I was the punchline of their secret joke. That was the moment something clicked inside me. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was fury, slow, boiling, deliberate fury. And it wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It settled deep in my bones. The kind of rage that doesn't scream. It plots. Because I realized I would never get back the years they stole from me. But I could take something from them, their comfort, their control, their illusion of victory, They thought I would break. They thought I would disappear, that I would cry, scream, and then forgive, like I always did. But they were wrong. I had spent too many years putting others first. Now, I was finally going to put me first. And when I did, I would make sure they both regretted underestimating me, not through violence, not through chaos, but through something much more satisfying, consequences they'd never see coming. Once the pain settled, all that remained was clarity. I stopped asking, why? I stopped waiting for an apology. Instead, I started planning. I knew I couldn't just leave. They wanted that. They wanted me to vanish, to give them a clean slate without consequences. No, they would have to live with what they did, not as a secret they buried, but as a truth that ruined them. But for that, I had to be smart, precise, patient. The first thing I did was stop reacting. I went back to smiling when Melissa texted. I laughed at Jason's stories at dinner. I even planned a small gathering for our anniversary, a dinner party with close friends, including her. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to believe I knew nothing, because people are careless when they think no one is watching. I began collecting everything. Old messages Jason forgot to delete from his laptop, receipts from hotel bookings under his company name, photos from Melissa's Instagram with small telling details, the reflection of a car window, a pair of shoes in the background, the exact timing of when she'd been out of town. I made a folder on a USB drive and labeled it Insurance. Then I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. Not for divorce. Not yet. I wanted to understand my position, our assets, our contracts, the house, the cars, his business, which, by the way, was partly under my name. It turns out, I held more leverage than he thought, than they thought. And as I listened to the lawyer explain things, I realized something chilling and beautiful. They had played with the wrong woman. I wasn't broken. I was building. I began making small moves, subtle shifts. I stopped transferring money into our joint account. I redirected deposits to my personal savings. I went through our files at home, scanning every document, every insurance policy, every piece of paper with a signature on it, all while Jason kissed me goodnight and Melissa sent heart emojis in our group chat. Let them laugh. Let them enjoy the lie. I was preparing the truth, and the truth was a weapon. I wasn't sure yet exactly how I'd strike, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. When I did, it would be clean, it would be public, and it would be unforgettable. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you expose them right away or wait and gather more evidence? What would you do? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading everything. And don't forget to subscribe. The next part of my story is where things really start to unravel. Some people think revenge is loud, explosive, obvious. Mine wasn't. Mine was polite. Every smile I gave them became part of my strategy. Every dinner I cooked, every favor I did, every I love you. They thought I was still asleep, still the woman who never questioned, still the safe little wife who'd never imagined betrayal living under her roof. But I was wide awake. Jason started working later again, or so he said. Melissa was busy with freelance clients. I didn't confront. I didn't hint. I didn't accuse. Instead, I left little openings. I played the fool, just enough to make them feel superior. At the dinner party I hosted for our anniversary, yes, I hosted it. I invited Melissa, of course. I even asked her to come early to help me set up. She smiled, all fake sweetness, and said, "Of course, babe. I'll bring wine." And she did. She brought my favorite bottle. She toasted to love that lasts. And Jason looked me in the eyes as he drank. I raised my glass and smiled, knowing everything I was about to take from them. What neither of them noticed was the guest list I had curated with precision. Friends from Jason's job, a partner from his board, Melissa's new client, all of them connected to their reputations, the ones they cared about most. And me? I was just the wife, the doting, trusting, gracious host. They didn't know that the USB drive I'd prepared was now in a secure place, that every message, every receipt, every picture had been backed up to a cloud account registered in my maiden name. They didn't know that the lawyer I had hired was also a woman who had once been through something eerily similar and had not recommended grace. And above all, They didn't know that I had already filed the quiet paperwork to secure my position in Jason's company, limiting his access to shared funds unless I approved. He still kissed me on the forehead every night, still held my hand at family gatherings. He had no idea that I had already changed the locks to our lake house property, the one he was secretly planning to take Melissa to in the summer. She had no idea I had access to her email inbox, the one she logged into on my tablet 2 years ago and forgot to log out of. I read every message. I knew about every plan, every lie, every insult. They called me boring, predictable, a little too good. What they didn't realize was that my silence wasn't weakness. It was patience. They were laughing, relaxing, sinking deeper into their illusion. And I let them. Because when you want your enemies to fall, you don't push them. You let them walk straight to the edge, all on their own. I had almost convinced myself I could wait a little longer. I had the evidence, the leverage, the advantage. All I needed was the right moment. But life has a way of showing you when it's time to act. And in my case, that moment came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Jason was in the shower. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, going through the motions like I had for years. That's when I saw it. His iPad was on the table, screen still lit up. A notification had popped up from the Messages app. Just one line, from Melissa. So, you still think she'll believe the New York trip story? I didn't even touch the screen. The preview said enough. But curiosity, or instinct, pushed me closer. Jason never left devices unlocked. Ever. But that day, he did. And that day, I saw everything. I opened the conversation, and there it was. The full plan. They were going to a luxury cabin in Vermont, the same one Jason and I had stayed in on our 10th anniversary. He had told me it was a business trip, said he was sharing a room with a colleague, even left a fake itinerary on the kitchen counter. And Melissa? She told me she was flying to California to visit her aunt. They were so confident, so careless, so ready to erase me. But the worst part wasn't the lies. It was the way they talked about me. "She's too busy pretending our marriage still works," Jason had written. "I think she's just scared to be alone." Melissa responded, "She'll be fine. Some women just need to be pushed out of the way." Pushed out of the way. As if I was a piece of old furniture taking up space in their perfect little future. That moment did something to me. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't scream. I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of certainty. Because now I knew they weren't just lying. They were planning to build a life out of the ashes of mine. They weren't going to confess. They weren't going to feel guilty. They weren't going to stop. They were going to keep going. Until I disappeared. And I don't disappear. I exist. And when I'm hurt, I don't collapse. I rise. The pain was gone. The confusion? Gone. All that remained was purpose. It was time. I had everything I needed. Documents, screenshots, records, timelines. I knew where they'd be, when they'd be there, and who could witness what I was about to do. I wasn't going to attack. I wasn't going to humiliate. I was going to let the truth do the work for me. Let them feel safe one last time. Let them laugh, pack bags, share glances, make plans. And then, I'd take it all away. With one email, one conversation, one perfectly timed moment. And I wouldn't look back. Because the difference between them and me, they built their fantasy on betrayal. I built my revenge on truth. And the truth was about to destroy everything they thought they'd gotten away with. They left on a Friday morning. Jason kissed me on the cheek, suitcase in hand, wearing that same navy blazer I'd bought him last Christmas. "Don't wait up," he said, smiling. "It's going to be a packed weekend." I smiled back. "Have a great trip." Melissa sent a message minutes later. "At the airport. Can't wait to unplug for a few days. I'll text when I'm back. Love you." I replied with a heart emoji. And just like that, they were gone. Two lovers off to relive a weekend I once thought had belonged only to me. But they didn't know what was waiting for them. Because while they packed hiking boots and wine, I was preparing the final touches of their undoing. At 2 p.m. sharp that Friday, a scheduled email went out. To Jason's business partners, to his investors, to his 2 sisters, and, very intentionally, to Melissa's mother. The subject line was simple: "The truth you deserve to know." Inside were attachments, photos, messages, hotel receipts, time-stamped records, a PDF timeline, all neatly organized in folders titled Jason Carter, Misconduct, and Melissa Hayes, Ethical Breach. But the masterpiece was the video. A simple slideshow, no voiceover, no commentary, just images, screenshots, facts, all in sequence. It began with a photo of me and Jason on our wedding day, and ended with a picture of him and Melissa in the reflection of a store window, holding hands while I was out of town. No accusation, no emotion, just truth. By 4 p.m., my phone was lighting up with calls, all of which I ignored. I didn't need to say a word. The evidence had done that for me. By 6 p.m., Jason's name had been removed from a business group chat. By 9 p.m., Melissa's mother had left me a voicemail, sobbing, apologizing for raising a daughter who could betray someone like you. I listened once, then deleted it. I didn't need apologies. I needed closure. The next morning, I drove to the lake house. Yes, the same one where Jason and Melissa were now hiding from the world, thinking it was theirs. I parked by the gate, typed in the new code I had programmed a week earlier, and walked inside. The look on Jason's face when he saw me was something I'll carry forever. Pale, speechless, eyes darting between me and Melissa, who stood behind him in a robe, frozen. I changed the locks, I said calmly. This house is legally under my name only. I suggest you both leave. Immediately. Jason tried to speak. Melissa opened her mouth and closed it again. I didn't wait. I sent everything to your board, Jason. I suggest you check your email. And Melissa, you might want to tell your agency you're taking a leave of absence. If they haven't already made that decision for you. You had no right. Jason started. No, I interrupted. You had no right. I just gave the truth a little light. And then I walked away. No screaming, no threats, just the sound of their silence, heavy and undeniable. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, alone, in my own home, and for the first time in months, I exhaled. The pain was gone. The fear was gone. I wasn't his wife anymore. I wasn't her best friend. I was a woman who had lost everything she thought mattered, and found something much more valuable in return, herself. The week after the lake house confrontation was the quietest week of my life, not because there was no noise around me, but because for the first time in a long time, my own voice was calm. Jason tried to call. Then he emailed. Long, rambling messages filled with apologies, excuses, and that tone he always used when he wanted to regain control. Angela, we never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I still care about you. I always will. I didn't respond. Not once. Melissa reached out too. She sent flowers, wrote a letter, the kind filled with sweet, empty words. She said she was lost, that our friendship was the most meaningful connection she'd ever had, that she didn't know why she did what she did. But I knew. She did it because she thought she could, because she never imagined I would have the strength to rise, to fight, to walk away without looking back. And that's where so many of us lose ourselves. Apologizing for being betrayed, blaming ourselves for being abandoned, shrinking to fit the idea of who they think we are. Not anymore. I spent those days putting my life in order. I canceled the credit card with Jason's name on it. Told him to collect his belongings from the apartment within 48 hours. No drama, no tears. I instructed my lawyer to finalize the divorce. Clean, fast, emotionally untangled, not for revenge, but because I no longer wanted to share my life with a man who never had the courage to choose me. That Friday, I drove to the beach. Alone. I took the letter Melissa had written, and I burned it. I took the wedding ring Jason had slipped onto my finger nearly 2 decades ago, and I threw it into the ocean. It wasn't an act of rage. It was a ritual, a goodbye. Not to him, not to her, but to the version of me who tolerated too much. The version who confused silence with strength, who thought loyalty meant self-erasure. It doesn't. Love is not sacrifice. Love is not suffering. Love is respect. And what they gave me was the opposite of love. Today, I don't carry bitterness. I carry scars. But scars aren't shameful. They're signs you survived. And I survived. I won, not because I got revenge, but because I didn't let the pain define me, because I learned to let go of what never truly valued me. And if you, the woman listening to my story right now, have ever been betrayed, left behind, replaced, let me tell you something. You are not weak. You are not forgotten. And you are not alone. You are powerful. You are allowed to walk away. And you are allowed to start over, without guilt, without apology, and without looking back. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you trusted with your whole heart? Someone who broke you and thought you'd never recover? Tell me your story in the comments. I promise, I read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe. Because this is just one story among many. And there are still so many more we need to tell.